Well, thank you very much for the invite. This is my second time to Australia, which I love. Australians travel a lot, and I've been lucky to travel. So every time I traveled, I met some Australians, and they all said, "Come home to visit us." Now, a lot of people say that, but they don't mean it. But Australians do mean it. So I did spend about 3 months here, and I rented a car and went all the way down the east coast, or around to Adelaide, caught the train up to Darwin, and then flew over to Perth. So I got a good feeling of what it's like here. Very hospitable, that's for sure. So it's great to be here. And I'm going to talk about the Agricultural Land Reserve and Strengthening Farming Program. What I'm going to do is try to go through a lot of the programs we have, not in detail, but of course I'm here all day, and maybe tomorrow, if anybody wants to contact me, I have a lot of the information I'm going to show you right here. But anytime you want to contact me afterwards, I'll be pleased to send you anything I can. There's something good and something bad. When I first got here, I did get the chance to go to the World Motorcycle Championships and congratulate Casey Stoner in winning, so I was very happy about that. I wasn't very happy about this, and I'm not sure who's responsible, but but I am a little bit of a spy. I've got to find out what you're doing that we're not, right? But actually, after spending just over a week in Melbourne, I can see why you are the best in the world right now, because it's a fabulous city, I must say. They didn't mention, but I was born in England and emigrated. And if you see the little cottage sign up there, that's where I was born. And when you go back to visit, what's interesting, the farmland is still there, and the cottage is built in the 1600s, and it's still existing. And sometimes in Canada, especially in British Columbia, we were just demolishing this green area, which we would call farming. But nevertheless, we had a big fight for that. So a little bit of a geography lesson about Canada. It's got 10 provinces. It's very similar, I think, to Australia, but we've got 10 provinces, 3 territories. It's the second largest country in the world. And we're going to be talking about British Columbia, you see on the west to your left, and Vancouver right at the bottom there. Our government structure, we have a federal government, the capital is in Ottawa. And then we have, underneath that, we have provincial and territorial governments, and under that we have regional, local governments and First Nations. That's our Victoria Parliament buildings, and that's our new Premier, Christy Clark. But all this that we're working on, and all the things that we have done over the past years, is really talking about food supply. And that's always seems to be, we have to get people to understand, why are we doing this, you know? Why are we maybe causing a noise next door on a farm? It's because we're producing food. And I think the speaker had mentioned before, for speaker, that, you know, we've lost contact with it. And that's why we have trouble sometimes planning to keep farming and sustaining some of the farmland. Going back a little ways, farming apparently started in the Middle East, where they started planting seeds, and that's where they introduced farming. So this is 10,000 years ago. If you go around the world today, and this is back in around Egypt, you'll find they're still farming there. This is a tomb that's older than the pyramids in Ireland. It's apparently built by the farming community. If you go there today, it's still farming around there. So it can last for a long time. Here's a tax coming off of the China, 4,000-year-old tax. And Australia is very much like Canada. We don't really have that history. We still got people, maybe they farmed 150 years, and people said, okay, that we'll do something else now. They don't realize that really farming is forever, if we're going to eat forever. We have to consider ourselves as one in the big world now. The world population, we've never been here before. We're going to be at 7 billion, and it's growing, a city of Adelaide, every 5 days. So I think it works out about 6 million a month. That's what's added to the population. So we're going to be to 9 billion, I forget what the figure is, something like 2040. We're going to be part of that, whether we like it or not. That's what's going to happen. We've got countries now that have built so much on their land, they're stretching out and buying up land in another country so they can get their food supply later. If you look at the amount of arable land per capita, especially in the developing world, it's going down. You see to the right, it's getting less. So we're going to have less land to produce the food for more people. So just going back to how we started. So here's an example of the beginning of farming, tilling the soil with antique tools. Here's a person, this is in Vietnam I took. This woman has got ladle and she's spreading manure between the rice crops to fertilize. This is the way they do it in North America, and this is the United States, California. No matter where you go in the world, somebody is tilling that soil And this is the Atherton Tablelands, or when I mention that up in the area, the guy says, Atherton Tablelands. So I've been working on that. So, but we're still tilling the soil 10,000 years later. We've got all the plains, we've got everything else, but we're still putting seeds in the soil to survive. We've got to realize that. So we can't just start moving on farmland. That's taken millions of years to be created. It should now be locked in. Whether that's the same in Australia as it is for British Columbia, it sure was. So this was what happened in just before 1973, before we started protecting the farming. We lost agricultural land. We were losing about 6,000 hectares, about what, 12,000 acres a year, and it's a prime farmland. It would be what we visited the other day just outside, where it's very productive land because it's easy to develop and it's easy to spoil there. Local governments had bylaws. They could ban anything they wanted. So if they didn't want a pig farm, the neighbors complained enough, no pigs in the area. So they actually would zone it out of the farming area itself. We had lots of nuisance suits going on. People were actually closing down farms, court injunctions about normal practices on the farm. We really didn't have good, strong environmental standards for farming. And you need that. If you're going to defend farming, you can't be causing pollution. So we had to look at that as well. And the last one is what I mentioned before. The lack of public awareness is incredible when it comes to food. It's not their fault, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It's our job to educate them, let them understand, and they will get on side. We rely a lot on our imports coming from the United States. This is what's happening there. 50 hectares of prime farmland, about 120 acres, are being lost every hour, equivalent to our protected land base being gone in 10 years. That's where we rely, and that's where a lot of people say, oh, we can build on our farmland, we can get it from somewhere else. This is somewhere else. And as I mentioned, when it expands on the best land. As you can see here, 79% of that the land, 79% of the fruits are grown in that area. So we are building on the best. We're not going up into the mountains. We're taking that nice flat agricultural land. Here's an example. This is Richmond. This is outside of, it's a beautiful area. Class 1 soil is the best we could grow on vegetable land. This was in 1954. The red is the urban development, and you can watch it slowly creep until this is what we've ended up with. And even that, we're not satisfied. We have to put golf courses in the middle of it. And it's interesting, we keep the name, but we don't keep the farm. So we start growing condos, and we still call it Winfield Farm. So in British Columbia, if you get a chance to go there, we had the Olympics there, and because we have a lot of mountains. It's a great place for hiking and skiing and outdoor recreation, but not the best place to farm, as you can see. So over 90% of it's like this. So we're really fighting for the valleys there, that low flat area. We all want to live there, and we want to farm there because that's the best land. So this is what was happening to us. So in 1973, the Agricultural Land Reserve was formed. So I'll use the term ALR. That's what we use basically all the time over there. It's less than 5% of the province, and it's mapped out. And all these local governments, they helped to establish it. And now we have 4.7 million hectares. Out of that, I'll talk later on about, but it doesn't mean you've got this for growing. A lot of it will be rangeland. Out of this 4.7, only 1% of that is Class 1 soils, which is the best. And then they established a Provincial Agricultural Land Commission. So the Land Commission, when they established it, it was a provincial body appointed. From 1973 to 2001, it was one provincial body. So you had about 7 commissioners that would make decisions over the Agricultural Land Reserve. The new government that came in changed it to make 6 regions. Now there's a problem with this, because what happens is in these regions, rather than the commissioners look on a provincial basis, they start looking on a local basis, and they get influenced. So it doesn't mean that every piece of land we've got is protected. There's always a fight. But one solid thing is that the public support it. So once a piece of ALR gets damaged, somebody will be on there, and the media is fabulous. They'll be all over it. So the Land Commission's main functions. We get applications for exclusions, other uses or subdivisions on the ALR. So nobody else can make that decision on that farmland other than that commission. And the commission's job is not to find urban land. The commission's job saying, is this going to affect agriculture now or for the future? They do not look at the economics of farming of the day. If a farmer says, I'm sorry, I can't make any money, their attitude is, we're looking at the land base, it moves on. Now, of course, you have to have farmers, but they can't decide on that, otherwise all the farms would go. There's always ups and downs in farming. So they're very solid that they're looking at the land base itself. They obviously review all the plans, and any community plan that we have has to be approved. If it's talking about the Agricultural Land Reserve, the Land Commission has to approve it. And they participate obviously in all different planning committees and public presentations. And they also had a lease program. I could go on for a long time with that. I used to supervise it, but it was to start young farmers. So they took all the crown land that was now in this Agricultural Land Reserve, and we leased it for 20 years with an option of 20. And we started a lot of new farmers with that who couldn't afford to get started. Just a little bit on the capability. One of the things that happens is people will buy up the land. We call them absentee landlords, let it go into disrepair. Really, everybody would look at it and say, well, it's not good farmland, but they have to understand the management. So if you look at our capability, it goes from 1 to 7. 1 is the very best that we have. And you can change it. So this we have trouble with in the south coast area. We have trouble with water. So here we have a soil that you'd look at and you say, this is only class 5. So somebody on the map could say, oh, we could build on this. But we put in drain tiles with laser systems, you know, laser planes, put the tile through that drains it, and the same land becomes very high vegetable production. So it goes from a class 5 to a 1 and a 2. So you always have to look at the improved rating. This is the opposite. This is up in the interior by the Thompson River. Here it's 5 and a 6. But all you've got to do is put water on it, and then once you get that, it can go up to a class 1 even. And you know that too. But this is the issue that sometimes we run into, people saying that dry land's no good. If you get water to it, it's excellent, of course. The land reserve is established not only with the soils, but we realize now it's the only area that we have for BC agriculture to exist and to grow. And so that's why they came in with such a strong piece of legislation. Now, throughout BC, if you go to the north, we've got large grain farms. If you go to the interior, we've got large cattle ranges, and all that land in the back would be Crown-owned, but it's leased to the farmers for their summer range. The Okanagan area is great now. We've got apple orchards, we've got vineyards. Our wine is world level now. Years ago, it used to, you either drank it or used it for paint thinner. It was so bad. But they got into changing the grapes, and now they can compete on a world basis. The Fraser Valley is the richest farming area, not only in BC, but in Canada. Very high production. So we have dairy, there's the poultry farm in there, and around it we have raspberry farms. Raspberry industry is very large in the same area. Blueberries, we are now the second largest producer in North America. This is just taken off. Like, it just seems that blueberries are very good in British Columbia. And I look at, when we went farming out to the farms the other day, I thought, I wonder if somebody gets going on blueberries here, because you can grow them, and you'd be able to grow them. So a massive market, and it's all to do with health today, of course. Lots of vegetables grown. Mushrooms, we have a lot of mushroom farms, the highest in Canada. Greenhouses, our greenhouses are very productive. They've even competed on a world basis of the production of cucumbers and tomatoes per square meter. And of course, organic farming, not large, but it's still there. And just to show you that it works, I remember I hadn't long graduated, and I had to go and look at this property, and this guy says, well, it shouldn't be in the farmland. It was about 20 acres, and it was sloping land. It was a bit hard land. So I said no, because it's for future generations. Well, it sounds fancy at the time. You go back there, this is a beautiful poultry farm, and he goes corn around it. Very productive farm. So it shows you, if you go back, it does work. You know, it's hard to plan ahead, but if you live around long enough, you'll see that it makes a difference. It will work. Now, one of our problems that we have the Agricultural Land Reserve, but if you look at this map, the two triangles at the bottom of the province, you'll see that it's 2.7% of the provincial land base. 81% of the people live there, and it's 81% where the farm gate receipts come. So you can just see it's heading for collision here. So what we had happening was subdivisions going next to an existing farm. And the farmer said, don't do this, because we're going to have nothing but trouble. I know we're going to get complaints. They ignored him, and we're going to put another subdivision. So he put this sign on the property. It says, warnings, coming soon. And he really got him. He says, hogs along the property line. So it must be a big, long barn. And you know, development stopped. Nobody was buying.